Ready to turn this pour into a tree? Excellent. Let's do this. Hi everyone, it's Miriam with a Y from Miriam's Nature. This is part 2 of a 2-part mini-series. When we parted company a couple of days ago, we had just finished making our all-brown pour. I walked you through the decisions I made and why. We got to see the pour dried and cleaned, and then I cruelly yanked up my toys and left you there wondering, where's the tree? How do you make the tree? Well, today, the questions get answered. Have you ever had an idea for something you want to make, but just needed the right thing to help you achieve it? When many of you started telling me that you don't draw, I had an idea to embellish a pour without drawing. It just became a matter of finding the thing I needed. What I wanted was a stencil, but not really a stencil, more like a mask, because a stencil does the opposite of what I wanted to do. Let me show you what I mean. If I lay this stencil on top of this painting, and I take my little stencil brush and I load it up with some black paint, and I pounce my black paint through my stencil into these little holes onto my painting. When I lift the stencil, I'm going to have black birds and branches on my painting. And that's fine. That would look very pretty. But I don't want a black silhouette on top of my dirty pour. I want a pretty dirty pour object on a black background. And I don't want to draw it. So I set out to see if I could find something locally that could fit the bill. And ideally something you could get too if you liked it. I looked at stencil after stencil, but they were all the same. The object was the holes. In other words, the bird was the cutout. The flower was the cutout. So I would end up getting a black bird or a black flower. And again, that's not what I wanted. But then one day, while at my local craft store, this happened. This is a video reenactment, by the way. And then this happened. Followed by this, and then this, and this. Angels sang, rockets went off in my head, and I knew I'd found my answer. Why? Because this stencil is a little different than most. The main focal point is not the holes that are cut out. So here, remember, the birds are cut out, so they become the hole, so that when you pounce your paint through the stencil, you get a black bird. This is different. What got cut out is the background. So the tree remains. The tree isn't the holes. And it was just a bonus for me that it's a tree. I think you know I love me some trees. I will paint them on anything, any day, in any medium. So when I saw that this was what I needed and it was a tree, yeah, I was kissing cashiers, random people in the store. Yeah, it was a good day. With this, I'll be painting through these holes the black negative space, not the positive image, meaning the tree, which you usually do with a stencil. So with this, I knew I could make the pour for the positive image, the tree, first. Are you with me? Awesome. Let's do this. Now, I've gone ahead and taped down my stencil all the way around on my board. Now, ordinarily, just taping down a couple of spots would be enough. You just don't want your stencil shifting around while you're doing this. But the reason I really went out of my way to tape the whole border, and I will continue to do it here, is because my board is a little bit bigger than my stencil, so I don't want to accidentally spill over with any black paint when I'm pouncing in this area or on the edges. For my background or my negative space, I've chosen black, and I'm going to be using DecoArt Americana's Lamp Black as my paint. And I've pulled out some pouncers. I am probably just going to go with one because I don't want to have to wash a whole bunch of brushes. I'm lazy that way. So I'm going to use the middle size one. DecoArt makes these too, but you'll be able to find things to use if you don't have pouncers. Makeup sponges can work really well. Even a wadded up piece of paper towel can do the job. I have a piece of cardstock pulled out so that when I load up my pouncer, I can make sure that I don't have that much paint on. You don't want to start pouncing with a whole heck of a lot of paint because you don't want it to bleed under your stencil. That kind of defeats the purpose of this wonderful thing. So I'm just going to lightly tap my brush into the paint and offload as much of it as I can. And I'm going to start pouncing, and you'll be able to see whether or not your paint is getting in there. And I'm actually going to pick up more paint on the cardstock since that area is still pretty wet. And this is the kind of thing that is better to do slowly and pounce a lot in the same area than to rush this, put a lot of paint, squish it down, and try to get it all in one motion. Because, again, you don't want your paint leaking under your stencil. So doing it a little bit at a time kind of saves you from that. It takes a little longer, but it's worth it. Now, if you're the impatient type, another way to do this really quickly is with spray paint. You put your stencil down and you whip out a can of spray paint and you just go to town. Again, very light coats so they don't bleed, but it'll get the job done a lot faster. But this is kind of fun for me, so I want to do it this way. Plus, I want to do this something inside. I didn't want to have to take everything outside and deal with fumes and all that. So this is friendlier for my lungs. And you can get some aggression out also by pouncing. You could think about whatever person kind of irritated you this week and just pounce, pounce, pounce. And the other thing that I'm going to recommend is when you go into an area, when you first push down, try not to push down on an edge first. Do it in the middle just to see how wet is your brush or pouncer. Because you can correct the amount if it's here. But if you squish down there and there's a whole heck of a lot, well, you've got it under your stencil. So start out in the middle, especially if you're not sure. Now, you may be able to see that there's sort of a light ring around every stencil area. And that's more because I'm using this type of tool rather than a brush to pounce. There are pouncing brushes, stencil brushes. They kind of get into the nooks and crannies a little better. But honestly, I prefer these because I would rather have this little line that goes around because I can see that I haven't bled under when I can see that little line. And also, it kind of gives me more of the tree pattern. because I hope this makes sense. This area will be a little wider because the black didn't go all the way over to the edge. So, and I'm totally cool with that. Now there are points at which I can see that my brush was a little overloaded, a little too much. So I get a solid black line there. Yeah, well, I'm sure I leaked a little bit in some places, but I'll be able to fix that. I'm not too panicked about it. The other thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is when you have little itty bitty pieces like this, you really want the driest brush you can have. This is not a spot where you want to have a highly loaded brush because bleeding here is just too easy. It's almost begging for bleeding to happen. So leave these areas for the driest brush you can. Like this is not a spot where I would come in right after loading my brush. This is the kind of spot that I would pounce, 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 pounce. And when my brush is just about needing paint again, that's when I would come in and do little fine details like this, so that I really am assured that I am not getting paint underneath. 20 minutes later, I've got the main parts pounced in, but I still have little itty bitty things to deal with. So what I'm going to use are my new favorite tools. These are little micro brushes that I've shown in a couple of videos, and they're designed for the dental industry. That's where I first found them, but you can also find them listed for eyelash glue, so for false eyelashes. They are, in a way, like a little baby pouncer. So they're going to be ideal for getting into these little nooks and crannies. And I'm just going to go into all those little holes that I couldn't get into easily. And yeah, this is working really well for that. All those little corners that were a little tricky. Not many a pouncer that could get into this, but these little guys, they do it without even blinking. I love them for alcohol ink, but they're really good for this too. So I think every fluid art studio needs to have some of these in them. If you're doing this on a canvas, put a book or a box or something underneath the area that we're working on at the time, so that when you pounce, there is something to support the canvas underneath. I don't have that issue because this is a board, so it's not going to give under my pouncing, but a canvas would. So give yourself the extra support. Okay, I'm going to let this dry. There's nothing wrong with lifting a stencil while the paint is still wet, but I'm just going to be cautious and leave it. All right, it is time for the reveal, and I'm really nervous. I'm a little excited. What if it's not what I think it's going to be? All right, Miriam, suck it up. It's going to be okay. I hope it hasn't bled a lot. That's my only concern. All righty, here we go. Ah! Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. How cool is that? Ah! Oh my gosh, I can't even. I love this. Okay, I seriously need to get a DecoArt tattoo at this point. I love their paints. I love their medium. And now I am loving their stencil. Oh my gosh. Wow. 20 minutes and I got a tree. I mean, if I had to paint this in my hand, yeah, it would not have taken 20 minutes. Initially, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the border that ended up being formed because, remember, the stencil has this edge. So at first, I was thinking I wanted the branches to run off the edge of the canvas, so now I'm not sure. Because if I do want that, then I would take the black over the edge. Or I could theoretically paint this in a whole other color too. So many decisions. I'm looking to see if there was bleeding. Yeah, over here where there are these little roundish spots there, but I am fine with, oh yeah. See, I was sure one of these was gonna get some bleeding underneath. Oh. Do I take the branches off the canvas? Now I know some of you are screaming, yes, and some of you are going, no, don't do it. Unfortunately, I can't hear any of you, so I have to make this decision all by myself. Like it's a little wider on this side than it is on this side. You know, for the first one of these, I think I'm going to be okay with that. You know, I'm always telling you not to freak out if something's not perfect, so I need to teach myself that too. Okay, I'm going to have a little think and see what, if anything, I want to add to this. Okay, here's the plan. The other day, I got happy mail from Alyssa B, who sent me these Uniball Signo paint pens. I've always wanted these. And she sent me markers, and I'm super excited. But these are a fine line white paint pen. And what I think I'm going to do, I tried in a couple of spots, and I like the look very much. I'm going to just outline the top and left of the tree so that the sun is, for all intents and purposes, coming from here. And then I've had this wooden little bird for the longest time, and I've never done anything with it. I think I'm going to use the Extreme Sheen, paint it gold, and then maybe attach it here. What do you think? You know, I love adding stuff. And this lets me play with my new toy. Thank you, Alyssa. And I get to do something with a bird, because when in doubt, put a bird on it. Ooh, these are fun. It kind of gives it, I don't know, like it gives it like a 3D kind of look to it. So let me be a little bit better about getting a straight line. This is the only place where I care. Okay, it's a little embarrassing how much fun this is. I mean, it's almost silly. I am having fun outlining a tree. I am so easily entertained. I finished my little outlining, and I've painted the bird this really bright gold. Oh my gosh, it's so shiny. And I sort of shaved down the wood here a little so that the transition isn't so harsh between the branch of the tree onto the bird. I pulled out some of the colors I had used in the pour, and I have to see if I can kind of mimic a little bit of the pour onto the branch that this little guy is sitting on. There we go. That'll work. I gave him the white outline also. Initially, my plan was to attach the bird here so that this would be a continuation of this branch, which kind of ends kind of like a dead end kind of thing. But upon a reflection, I decided to move it down here. If I do that and then narrow this branch a little bit and have this be more black here, the bird outline will pop more against the black. Yeah, see, you really see the bird better than if I put him up here. Don't you think? I just love how this little guy or gal shimmers. This paint is super shiny, really. I love everything about this. It's just what I'd hoped for, and kind of more. I will likely continue to fiddle with it here and there, you know, clean up. Some of the edges are a little crooked or whatever, but I just, I am so over the moon giddy. It's just, yeah, it's a little stupid. I cannot wait to see in the comments what you guys think. We didn't have to draw a thing. I mean, I added white lines, but that doesn't count. Now about the little bird, I had a wooden one, but you could do this with cardstock, and you don't have to draw the bird. Print a bird off from clip art, just Google bird clip art, print it on something like cardstock, cut it out, paint it gold or whatever color you want, and just add it to your tree. If you want a bird, you don't even have to have a bird. Now, we did this to an acrylic pour, but for those of you that also do alcohol inks or oils or watercolor or colored pencil, the same principles apply. Let me know what ideas this is giving you. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more videos like it, make sure to subscribe and click that bell to know right away when a new video is out. Links for everything I used are in the description box below the video, including the awesome tree stencil, which, by the way, I know I'm going to get asked, how do you clean a stencil? Just let it soak in water and you can just lightly rub on it. The paint just wants to come off the stencil. It's really easy to get it off. Now, I've been watching the price of that stencil on Amazon. It goes up and down like the stock market. So wait until it's a decent price before you get it. Everything else can be found in this easy, all-encompassing list of recommended products that I set up for all of you. Please continue using any of my links to get you to Amazon right before making any purchase. It doesn't even have to be something in my list. It is helping me grow this channel. Another way that you can help is by becoming a contributing patron of mine on Patreon. This week, I'll start adding rewards to my Patreon page. That means as a patron, you can get free digital art of mine to download and use. You get question answering priority, extra videos only for patrons, and even more. I'm so excited about this too, because it's going to give me a chance to get to know some of you better and more personally. If you found this video helpful and maybe a little fun, please let me know with a thumbs up and take a quick second to share it with everyone you can. Remember, join my new Facebook group to see wonderful art that everyone is creating and show off yours. Get ideas, learn about resources from each other and me every now and then. Thanks as always for spending time with me. I so enjoy all of you. Remember to let your creative nature shine. See you next time. Bye now.